And welcome to this special edition of the Catholic Man Show. I'm Adam Minahan. To my right is my best friend, co-host. I don't know. I was gonna like list a long thing. Wingman. Yeah. David Niles.
Lifelong burden.
Yes, the cross that I have to bear. To my left, we have Brett McKay from the Art of Manliness. Brett, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
And welcome to the show. So we kind of had this we didn't really have a plan of action. We just wanted to talk to you.
All right. We're improvising.
Improvising.
That's manly.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
First, before we get into the Art of Manliness, I want to ask you, you just went to the Clear Creek not too long ago. I saw that on your social media. What were your thoughts?
It was great. So I belong to a book group here in town where we've been reading the great books. Guys, Scott Hambrick is the guy heading up. He owns online great books. And we've been reading Thomas Aquinas. So we decided.
The Summa?
The Summa, yeah, Summa Theologica. So we decided for our discussion of Aquinas, we would go to Clear Creek Abbey. What better place
for sure.
to do it? We went there. It was fantastic because it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's no cell phone reception.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You get in there and you're stepping into another world because you're on this schedule. It's been set for like over 1,500 years.
Right.
One thing I found was really weird. I was just sleepy. I was just tired all the time. I just wanted to nap all the time. And I've read people who've stayed at monasteries too, who aren't monks, and they said the same thing happens to them. Like they want to sleep all the time.
Yeah.
But then you kind of get into this rhythm and schedule, and everything's good. But it was fantastic. It was just a great break from the world, and we had some great discussion. We were discussing the nature of evil, the problem of evil. I don't think we totally grasped it, but we got closer than we were before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I'm hoping to go back there again. Food was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, did you get to eat with the monks?
Yeah, we ate with the monks.
So you
did? Okay, good.
So they were chanting.
Yeah, the whole entire time, but it was in English.
Right.
So they're like reading Catholic history.
Yeah.
It was actually really interesting. I was like, I didn't want them to stop.
Yeah, it's so weird though that like them chanting in English while you're eating.
Hello, Pontius Pilate. It's like,
right.
All right, I understand this.
The first time I went there, I had no idea what to expect, and I was eating lunch, and they were chanting a history book about Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And it was the funniest. Just to listen to him, and then Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves.
Right.
And there was much rejoicing.
Yeah, exactly. But it gave me, guys, I should do that with my kids. Like when we're eating, just play something, like some kind of history book while we're eating. So they learn. Because I actually, I remembered stuff. I learned things. So.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? I do remember the stuff that I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never really realized
because everyone's
that,
in quiet. You can't talk.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to listen. That's something you got going.
Well, we have a camp out coming up. Impromptu, if you can make it, October 28th or October 18th through the 22nd. We'll be out there. So if you can come out there for even a couple hours or days.
Yeah, it's out there at Clear Creek. They let us go out there, and guys from all over the U.S. come in, and
that's awesome.
It's a pretty cool camp out. Juan, our buddy Juan, he roasts a pig over the fire, and so I mean, you can't get much manlier than that.
Manlier than that.
It is pretty awesome.
Okay, so let's talk about the Art of Manliness.
Sure.
I'm a big fan of. I listen to your podcast.
Thank you.
I really like.
Yeah.
You know what? You actually listening to your podcast got me a kick on reading Winston Churchill biographies.
Oh yeah.
I've now read 3 this year.
Which ones have you read?
So the Churchill to America, the one with Candace Millard.
Yeah.
Heirs. It was about the Boer War.
Yeah,
I can't remember the
It's called
title.
Hero of the Empire.
Hero of the Empire. And then the Theodore Roosevelt, Winston Churchill.
Which one was that?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway,
okay.
I would not have read those until that. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
He is. Somebody said that it takes a moment to recognize all of his vices and a lifetime to recognize his virtues.
Oh yeah, no, sure. There's a series of biographies that are long. There's 3 of them. One of them, I forgot the name of the author, but one of them is The Last Lion is the name of the title. And the guy was just super interesting. He was, a lot of people don't know this, but he made his living writing, right? So he
right.
And that's why he went to war. He wanted something to write. Well, first he was a soldier I think in Cuba. But then the Boer War, he was just going there as a journalist. And instead he decided to become a combatant. And that's how he became a prisoner of war.
No kidding.
Yeah, then he escaped on this. And that's what made him a hero and kind of that.
That's what put him on track.
That's what put him on track to become prime minister.
Wow.
That story of him escaping is awesome. I highly recommend it. You're almost on edge of your seat just reading it.
Wow.
He's going to get caught.
I did not know that about him.
Yeah.
All I know about him is as a public figure.
Right. World War II.
Yeah.
But he had a whole career that was really fascinating and interesting before that.
And, like you said, a lot of people know about his vices, but he just seems like the leader that they needed at the time.
At that time,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Okay, so you started the Art of Manliness a little over 10 years ago?
Yeah, 2008. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
What made you start?
So here's the origin story.
Okay.
I was a law student at TU here in town, and it was 2007. I was taking a break from studying. I went to Borders over there on 81st.
Oh, yeah.
Yale.
The restaurant.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Sweet.
And taking a break, and I was looking at the men's magazines like I typically do.
The bookstore. I said
The bookstore, yeah.
on the border is the restaurant.
On the border, yeah, on the border.
Yeah.
But Borders did have like a little cafe. Checking out the men's magazines like I do, like it's just a sort of habit. And I was looking over the headlines, and I realized, you know what? Every month with these things, the same thing. It's like articles on six-pack abs.
Yeah.
Sex positions and like, clothing that I could not afford as a broke, newly married law student. It just didn't resonate with me. I was like, this is terrible. How about I start the men's magazine that I'd want to read? So I'd been blogging a bit at the time, and I said, you know what? I can just buy a domain name, start putting up content. So that's what I did. Right there in the bookstore, I pulled out a pocket notebook, started writing ideas of what I was imagined it was going to be. I mean, at this point, I had no like idea of like, I wasn't an expert on manliness, right? Just a dude living my life. I didn't like what was being put out there for men. So I started thinking about the content ideas, headline ideas, like the brand of it. And I wanted to be kind of vintage because my grandfather is a big hero of mine. And for me, like that represented, like that was a man, right? Like, that World War II generation, they were stoic. They just lived life. They were service oriented. Yeah. Didn't put themselves first. They're always going for a bigger cause, family. And so I was like, okay, you gotta have a title. You gotta have like a name. Right. So I was like, sort of spitting ideas. And I read this book when I was in college called The Manly Arts, which is about 19th century bare knuckle boxing. And I was like, the manly arts, that doesn't sound as cool. I was like, how about the art of manliness? Yeah. And I was like, that's got a ring to it. Yeah. I came home and bought the domain name and started writing content for it. And 2008, January, I launched it. First article was how to shave like your grandpa. Nice. I'd been experimenting with safety razor shaving. Yeah. And just made this like very thorough article about it. And for the first 3 months, not much traffic, just basically friends and family checking it out. And then, do you guys remember dig.com at all?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So that was like the front page of the internet, right? If you got on the front page of Dig, that just sent you boatloads of traffic. Well, I was in Wills Estates and Trust in law school, learning about, I forgot what it was. And I was checking out the site, and it crashed. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I went over there, and I saw that I got on the front page of Dig, and I was just getting so much traffic, it crashed my site. And that's the moment that put me on the map. And it was off to the races since then. So it was like 3 months in, so like March 2008, that I got on the front page of Dig. And from there, we started getting linked on other big sites, Lifehacker, Reddit. We'd get, go viral on StumbleUpon. And fast forward, like a year later, we had a book deal for our first book, The Art of Manliness, the Green Book. Some of you guys, you might have seen that one. And then 2011, I graduated law school in 2009. And then in 2011, decided to go full time with the blog.
That's awesome.
Forget law. Forget
law. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I didn't take the bar exam after I graduated law school. 'Cause I interned some firms down here in downtown. I was like, this is not for me. So I did do a year, or it was like 6 months working for Thomson Reuters, which they do legal research, right? So whenever a lawyer does research for a case, they go to this thing called Westlaw. I worked for them teaching law students how to use Westlaw. It's a great gig. But then, I was trying to do that in the blog. My wife and I had our first kid, my son, and I just I can't do this all anymore. So something has to give. So I had to put in my 2 weeks notice after 6 months of working.
Because you can't do that for the kid.
Right. No. Yeah. Right.
So why do you think that there's such a thirst for this understanding of what the art of manliness is?
The art of manliness. Well, I think, we've written about this a lot. If you go to our site, we've really nailed this. But I think what's going on is there's a whole confluence of factors. I would say there was a period in time in America and in the West where people had a good idea of what it meant to be a man, right? You had a dad in your house who was showing you just by example. You were surrounded by grandparents, uncles, close-knit community where you learned how to be a man through action. You worked with your dad, you worked with your grandfather, you worked with your uncle, you saw manliness in action. And then like in the middle of the 20th century, that started going away, right? We had, the whole cultural revolution that happened in the 1960s, where ideas about what it meant to be a man, or even, the bigger things, what role does religion have in our life? What's the role of government in our life? They all got, topsy-turvy, right?
Yeah,
sure.
And so now we're starting to think, people started questioning, well, what does it mean to be a man? Like maybe what our grandfathers thought manliness meant isn't what it means to be a man. So there's this whole reinvention. And so there's all these different competing ideas of what manhood means. And so, I think that's the confusion, right? I mean, you can go to different places and they're going to tell you what it means to be a man, and they're all contradictory in some way. And so I think there's a lot of young men in particular who are looking for just, straight up answers, what it means to be a man. And they didn't get it from their dads for whatever reason. Maybe dad wasn't there.
Right.
Or maybe dad was there, but he's at work all the time. Right. So he didn't really, he was away from the kids, basically.
Yeah.
It wasn't dad trying to be mean and negligent. It's just, that's the way life was. Right. And then you also have all these competing influence from pop culture telling you different things. So I think there's a lot of young men who are just confused and they're looking for answers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that just presence of men in the home, for whatever reason, it's not there today like it used to be. And another thing that's interesting, you're talking about that cultural revolution took place in the 60s. I think we can blame the 60s for a lot of stuff. But you also mentioned government. If you go back to the early 1900s and then hundreds of years before that, and you look at who was it that was getting married at the time? It was a man who was about 30 marrying a woman who was about 17. And the reason was because as a man, you had to be able to establish yourself. You had to be able to provide for another human being before you could get married, okay? It wasn't until that government played this larger role in our life with, this increased socialism, where now if you can't take care of yourself, that's okay. The government will take care of you. That it allowed for two people in their 20s to begin to get married, and then now it's two people in their late 20s, and it's just an interesting thing, because boys become men a decade after girls become women. That everybody knows men mature later on. I don't know. I don't have a point here with this. I'm just saying, this is an observation
right.
That I just found interesting and fascinating.
Yeah. And what I think is interesting, one of the things I've discovered researching and writing about manliness for over 10 years is that this crisis of masculinity that people call it, it's not new. We always think this is a new problem, that it's new, it's unique to the 21st century. We've been having the same discussion for thousands of years. Like, what does manliness, what does it mean to be a man?
Yeah.
You can go back 150 or 100, I'd say 130 years ago, around the turn of the century. And there's the same sort of conversation. So what was going on there? And I think another influence sort of causing confusion is the advancements in technology, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So part of being a man for thousands of years is you're a provider, right? You work to provide for your family. But what happens whenever technology makes you obsolete in a way, right? What does it mean to be a man when you don't have to work? So this happened. This is happening right now with whatever it's called, artificial intelligence, where lawyer jobs are being outsourced to computers, right? Doctor, part of I think there's radiologists now, they can send the X-rays to a computer, and the computer can scan for tumors, whatever, right? Well, this same sort of thing was happening at the turn of the 20th century with industrialization, right? Men who worked with their hands or farming, well, they had machines that could do that. Right. So what does it mean to be a man when you got a machine that can do what you do, and you no longer can provide for your family in a way? There's a great quote by Nassim Taleb. He's the guy that wrote The Black Swan,
Okay.
Fooled by Randomness. And he has this quote, I forgot which word it was, but it says, "The opposite of manliness isn't cowardice, it's technology."
Oh, really?
Right? So think about everything that we think of what it means to be a man. Being a provider, well, there's a machine that can do your job. So what does it mean to be a man when you can't provide for your family in that traditional way anymore? Or look at warfare. Like, that's always been a domain of men primarily, warfare. But now we've got these drones.
Right.
We can send in where you're just doing like video game style.
Right.
Right. Not really. So what does it mean?
A woman could
do that
just as well.
Just as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, all right, well, what's the difference between men and women? Well, the obvious one is our strength.
Right.
And if we no longer, what are we using it for now? Because we have, machines plow the fields. You know, we don't have to. Right. What do we have to use our strength for? Right. You know.
So that's something else to think about. And people want to, I think it's not one thing. Everyone wants to find like the one thing we can blame, but it's not. It's culture, it's technology, it's economics. And so, at the turn of the 20th century, you had this crisis of masculinity. Machines can do what we can do. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be a man, right? When no longer you don't have to use your physical strength to make your way in the world. Well, during this time, this is when you had the rise of organized sports. Baseball, football, basketball, it all got its start during that time, and it was in a way a reaction to sort of that crisis of what does it mean to be a man, right? When we can't use our strength in a productive manner anymore. So what we can do is we can simulate it, right, through sports. And so that's sort of that's when when you think about it, like a lot of our ideas of what we think of manliness in America today got its start then. Right, sports, bodybuilding, like strength training, got it started. Like Eugene Sandow, the first bodybuilder. It's called physical culture. He was a physical culturist, is what they called it. The Scouts got started during that time. So that was there was like this nervousness, like, hey, these boys, they're no longer working on the farm anymore. They're living in cities. They're not going off to war, right? They're just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Well, we got to get them out in the wilderness, right? It's like learn how to be men,
right?
And then also during this time, you saw the rise of the muscular Christianity movement, right? So you had this concern that the church was too effeminate, right? So they said we're going to inject some more manliness into it. So you had different, in Protestantism, it happened in Catholicism as well, where like men's groups started forming in religions, and they tried to getting guys out in the outdoors, focusing on the manliness of Jesus, things like that. So this is all happening. Our great grandparents were going through the same thing that we were going through today, right? And I think it's a lot of the same causes. It's a matter of technology, economics, culture, and then you can go back to even ancient Greece and Rome. They're having this. What does it mean to be man? And here's why we're always going to have this discussion, because unlike you kind of mentioned this earlier, across cultures, you're a woman once you can have children, right? That's like, hey, you're a woman. Manhood across cultures is something you earn, right? You're not you're not a man because you've gone through puberty, right? Across culture, being a man is a status you have to earn. So it's always in question. And so I think because of that fact that manhood across cultures is a status you have to earn through certain acts or developing certain virtues, we're always going to have that discussion about, okay, what does it mean to be a man? And so I don't think it'll ever be. So I think, we're having this, discussion now. I think we're going to have it 50 years from now, 100 years from now, because of that fact that being a man is a status you have to earn.
Well, in some ways that makes me feel better. That okay, this isn't brand new. This isn't brand new. I mean, things aren't unraveling.
Right, it's different. Right, it's not exactly the same, but it is the same in a way.
But so this idea of becoming a man, there's some cultures had these rites of passage. I think of the ancient Greeks who, you had this ceremony and you became a man, and now you were recognized as a. We don't have anything like that.
Right.
And so it does. For those kids, they went through it. They knew they were a man, and now they knew what was expected of them.
Right.
And when does a young boy when does anyone expect something of him? Not.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. We've got 30-year-olds living at home with their parents, and
But even like, even when we have those traditional adult markers for adulthood, you can achieve them, but still not feel like a man, right? Like you can graduate college, you can get your first job, you can get married, right? And still not feel like a man for some reason. You have kids, probably don't. There's some guys who are like, man, I'm 40 years old and have 3 kids and I don't feel like a grown man. So yeah, because it's not set in stone, right? So yeah, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. Right, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a good challenge for us to help our sons. I don't have any sons yet, but God willing, someday I will. So that we can give them expectations, because I think that's part of it. Is nothing is expected of me,
right?
And so I don't have to rise to meet any expectations. I can just kind of sit here and do whatever.
So we talk about all the time on our show. We talk about how there's times where we do things, and at the end of it, you look back and you say, "Yes, I feel accomplished. That was extremely hard. It was arduous, but I accomplished it, and I now feel like mowing the yard or taking care of your yard." Right. A lot of times, it's not fun. Some people like it. I actually kind of like it. I'm kind of weird like that.
But, I do like mowing the yard.
But you do all this yard work. You're sweaty. You're exhausted. 100-degree heat here in Oklahoma. Yet you sit back at the end of it and you say, "Okay, I accomplished something." You take some pride in the dignity of the work that you did. Sometimes now I think that because like you were talking about how there's offices now, there's technology, we don't get the opportunity to have that strenuous moment, to have that to work hard.
To do hard things. Right.
And when you don't have that, then it's hard to take pride in what you have and the things around you.
Yeah, there's a great guy, a writer. He wrote Shop Class as Soulcraft, and he wrote another book. I forgot the name of it. Anyways, Shop Class as Soulcraft. Matthew Crawford is his name.
Okay.
That's the kind of point he made. One of the this is not even just about manhood, but just about life in the 21st century. Our work, since it's so ethereal, right? You can most people are at a computer, punching numbers in Excel spreadsheets. And at the end of it, you never really know, what did this do?
Yeah, it's
right?
hard to have a gauge.
What exactly did I accomplish today?
Yeah,
and
there's not a pile of widgets next to you that you just made.
But it's but he's this guy. He's a philosopher, but he also restores vintage motorcycles.
Right on.
And he talks about that work is more satisfying because at the end of it, when I fix this motorcycle, it works.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I know my actions had a cause, right? It had consequences. Right.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that with digital stuff, right? Or just the work of the 21st century. So yeah, I'm a big believer in people doing concrete things, like living less abstractly. I mean, there's a value for abstraction and contemplation. But there's also value in just concrete action, where you just get that satisfaction of fixing something and doing something very viscerally.
Yeah,
right.
I think it has a way of rooting you in reality.
Right. No,
which we've lost a lot of.
Oh yeah.
In our culture.
Right. No,
today.
we are living in unreality with the internet and social media and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
What's a virtue that you think that men it just didn't get passed down to this generation? There's this virtues. Virtues that you talk about your grandfather, your grandfather was a big hero of yours.
Right.
He had all these virtues that was passed on to him from his dad.
Right.
Then there was some kind of gap between that and our parents, and then our parents to us.
Right.
Where there were some virtues that were either lost or wasn't passed down to. What do you think that those are?
Just I don't know what virtue what you would call this, but it's the idea that you're working for something bigger than yourself.
A servant.
Right? A servant, right? Service.
Yeah.
You look at that World War II generation, and they just, it's one of my favorite times of history because you see these just regular guys who, some of them got drafted, but a lot of them just joined up. They answered the call to go fight for their country. And they were, the battles they took part in were just crazy, right? Just, they're epic and big and romantic, right? I know that's sort of sad. It's sort of weird to say that a war can be romantic, but it is in a way romantic, right? The Battle of the Bulge, you're these guys in foxholes getting just shellacked with bombs, freezing cold, and they won, right? And then they come home, and they just, what do? They go back, they start working, take care of their families, coach baseball. They just went back to serving, right, and putting others first. And that was the big takeaway I got from my grandfather. I feel like it was my grandfather in that generation, they were more concerned about being useful rather than important.
Yeah.
And I feel like today it's backwards. People, particularly young people, they want to be important.
Right.
And then maybe they can be useful. Right. But no, usually no. They just want to be important through, it's all social media, self-promotion, becoming a personal brand.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And they think that's going to give them meaning and significance and whatever, but it doesn't. And my grandfather, I look at his career, he died a few years ago, and I had the opportunity to give his eulogy, and I was looking over all these amazing accomplishments he did in his life. But the thing is, I never knew that because he never talked about it. He never had them up on this wall, just like it's what he did. Right. And, so yeah, I like to think my grandpa was too busy being useful to think about being important. And that's the kind of life I want to live. Because in the end, that's the kind of life that gives you significance. It leaves you feeling satisfied, gives you meaning. Money can't give you that. Fame can't give you that. It's just living a life where you give more than you take. So, that's another, if you want to talk about what it means to be a man, there's a book called Manhood in the Making. It's written by this anthropologist named David Gilmour. And it was published probably in the 80s or 90s. And he did a cross-cultural analysis of what it means to be a man in different cultures. And he found, with a few small exceptions, that it's pretty much the same, right? Every culture defines being a man pretty much the same way. And one of the key attributes that separates men from boys is men give more than they take, and boys take more than they give. Right? Men are producers, boys are consumers. And I feel like in today's culture, it's very consumer oriented. Our whole economy is based on the idea you have this stuff that's given to you. You don't have to really produce anything. Right. Yeah. But also on a higher level, we just think about what can we get, right? How can the world serve me, instead of thinking, well, how can I serve the world or my community?
Absolutely. I think I really like that definition about taking more than you give, giving more than you take, because that's really essentially what it is.
And that's something that's a tangible thing that every man can do right now.
Right.
Everybody wants that silver bullet like you were just talking about. Well, that actually could be one.
Right. No.
That's something you can start now with your wife, with your kids.
To me, another kind of a measuring stick for me is a man doesn't complain. Boys do. Right. Man, of course, they do hard things. That's what you're made for. That's why you have a thicker skeletal structure and stronger muscles. It's because you're made to do stuff that's hard. But you don't complain about it because that's what you're made for. Okay? That's what you're supposed to do. So just go back to work and be quiet. Whereas a boy, he's, he hasn't grown in all of those. He's not strong yet. So he's going to complain about it.
Whine and complain about it.
And we have a lot of whiners today.
There are some whiners. No whining.
So we said virtue. Now let's talk about vice. What's one of the biggest vices you think here in today's culture that men struggle with? There's a lot, right? It's like shooting fish in the
ways, right?
Yeah, shooting fish in the barrel here.
I think the opposite. It's just like if people aren't living that virtue, it means they're living that vice, which is selfishness, self-centeredness. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest vice, because people are just thinking about themselves all the time. Yeah. And not only is that good for the world or the community or your family, but it's like terrible for you, right? If you're just constantly thinking about yourself, you end up thinking about your problems, right? Because that's what you go to, right? It's like, well, that voice in your head goes to like, well, my life sucks this way.
Woe is me.
Woe is me. What is this all for? And I think if you want to get out of that vicious cycle, you have to get outside of your brain. And one of the ways you can do that is just engaging with reality, like doing stuff with your hands, doing hard things with your body. That gets you to stop thinking about yourself, but then also thinking just, okay, how can I help that person? How can I make my wife's life a bit better? How can I make my kid's life a bit better? If there's one thing you can do, it's not the silver bullet again, but if you're feeling like malaise and depression or anxiety, like stop thinking about yourself, because all you're doing is you're going to just keep constantly thinking about those negative things. You're going to go, further down the hole with that. So just get outside of your brain and you'll feel a lot better.
on the Art of Manliness, you put out basically 2 podcasts a week, typically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I forget what number you're on, 400 and something. Is that
yeah,
right?
450, I think. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't keep count.
It's a good number.
Yeah.
What are a couple that have really stood out to you? What are the ones that have been like, yes, that one made a...
For someone who hasn't listened to all 450, what would be a good ones from the past to go dig out of the closet?
So that Matthew Crawford podcast, I did a podcast with him, really good. Then I did one with this classics professor named Carlin Barton. She wrote a book called Roman Honor, which is probably the best book I've ever read. It's on Amazon, but it's super expensive because they didn't really print that many copies of it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those books where like the footnotes are even interesting. But she goes into like the psychology of ancient Romans, particularly in the regards to honor. And it's hard to describe because she paints a vivid picture of what it may have been like to be an ancient Roman and experiencing like what it meant to be a Roman during that time. And she gets into manhood and manliness and what it means. That's a really good podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And she has some great insights about manhood. She talks about, in Rome, manhood, being a man was a status you earned. So males in Rome were called homos, H-O-M-O. You were a male. But to become a vir, or if you want to be a Latin nerd, vir, V-I-R, become a man, you had to develop virtus, manliness, virtue, strength. And so status for or being a man for the Romans was a status you had to earn, and we still have that idea today with us. Mm-hmm. So I think it's it gives you a lot of insights about manhood today, learning about the ancient Romans. So Carlin Barton is a good one. If you're looking, another one I like.
That was my smoke alarm, I believe.
Just a little thunder.
Little thunder.
Little thunder.
Ride the thunder.
Yeah.
What was the... if you're looking for another one is this guy named Earl Labor. He's an interesting guy. He's like 90 years old now.
It's a manly last name.
Yeah. Earl Labor. He's from Oklahoma. But he became a Jack London scholar. And he wrote this like seminal biography about Jack London. So I did an interview with him about Jack London, who is an interesting character. But then I also did an interview about this memoir of his that he wrote called The Far Music. And it's about this trip that him and his buddies took in the 1950s after they graduated college. They started in Texas, and they hitched. Their plan was to hitchhike all the way to Canada and build a cabin from scratch and just live in the Canadian wilderness. Right. But they only make it to like Kansas City. And they were working the idea was like to work the grain harvest, all going north. Okay. And they of course they get stuck, and they were doing these just terrible jobs. It's like just backbreaking labor, sucking in alfalfa dust. They got sick, and they ended up in Kansas City, and they decided, okay, we're not going to make it, so they go home. But he was a good interview because he has just, I don't know, he doesn't really talk about being a man explicitly, but from the stories you get it, right?
Yeah.
And that was a good one. And then it just depends on the thing is we do so many different topics. You do. It's pick or choose. So it depends on what you're interested in. So if you're interested in being a man, I think the Carlin Barton one is good. I did an interview with another academic, Leo Browdy, who wrote a book about masculinity throughout history. That's a good one. Another one is I did another interview with another classics professor about manhood. His name escapes me, but he wrote this book called Ghost and Soldiers. And just about how warfare changed throughout the Greeks and Roman time, and how it was all trying to capture this idea of manliness in the Iliad, which is really interesting. So then we have like things on just like fitness and money and whatever. But those are the ones that right now I think like really stick out to me.
You mentioned honor. You also wrote a really good article.
It was a series
on honor.
Yeah, one of the hardest things we ever wrote, and I wanted to punch myself in the face.
Well, it's
stab
really
myself in the eye. Yeah,
because we did an episode on the virtue of honor, and I used your article a lot for.
Well, I'm glad it was
reference.
I'm glad it was useful.
Yeah, and I pretty sure I even gave you credit for it.
It's okay if you didn't.
If not,
I'm
he is
pretty
now.
sure I did.
Right.
If I didn't, I didn't mean to not do it.
No, yeah, honor is one of those weird things. It's a word we say a lot, but I think most modern Western people don't really know what it means, like what honor means.
Yeah.
We think of it as integrity, but for, the founding fathers, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, honor was your reputation as a man, basically. And so whenever you said, I swear by my honor, like that was like you're swearing by your sense of self, right? And that was big deal. It was a big deal. And yeah, it was primarily a thing of manliness. To have honor as a man meant you had to have strength, you had to have courage, and you had to prove it and withhold it, and always, it was a very public thing. It wasn't something internal. You had to like show others that you had those virtues, but it had its downsides too, because honor cultures, a lot of them, it's might makes right. So if someone called you a liar, even if you really did lie, as long as you beat the guy in a duel, well, you're not a liar because you won. So there are some downsides to honor culture, but I think
Definitely.
the benefits of it is, it holds people accountable, right? Going back to, if you're just if you're your own judge, right, of your own self-worth, well, you can be awesome in your own head.
I am.
I'm
Trust
awesome
me.
in my head. But when you get out there and actually engage again with something outside of yourself, you might find out, oh, maybe I'm not as cool. And I think that's one of the things that honor cultures do. It holds you accountable for your actions. But yeah, there's downsides to
And
it.
a virtue is always the median between two extremes.
Yeah.
And so that's just, any virtue can be taken
to
a
an
bad
extreme.
way.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Right. Yeah. But it sounds like honor is like the proof is in the pudding. If you are going to live a virtuous life, well, is it evident by your
Right.
life? That's kind of your honor.
Right.
And we even today we talk about giving. We know it's like, oh, let's give honor to whatever, but we don't think about possessing it.
Yeah.
In just our day-to-day life.
Right.
I think it goes back to like the dignity of what you're doing, the dignity of work, making doing the best that you can in that moment.
And do you understand the dignity of what you're doing?
Right.
So you put yourself into it and want to do your best.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute just about what your thoughts are. A great quote that I really like from John Paul II. He says, "It's the duty of every man to uphold the dignity of every woman." I think that quote right there sums up a lot of problems that we have in the culture today.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on men not doing that, or how we can get back to that?
Yeah. I mean, it is for most of, I'd say, the history, at least here in America, there was this idea that men respect women, right? Because men are stronger than women, right?
Yeah.
There's that dynamic there,
Right.
So this whole idea of chivalry, rose out of that, right? And again, because of cultural changes, that was kind of seen as a chauvinistic, right? It's chivalry is chauvinism with a hat tip.
Yeah,
Right.
But I think it's important because it makes explicit something I think all know, that men are stronger than women, right? They can assert themselves, or not even assert themselves, like overtake a woman. That's what we're seeing all this stuff about this going on right now, right? And this Me Too things, right? There's men who some men who use their power to overpower women, right? So I think chivalry, courtesy, etiquette, things like that, between those differences between the sexes, it's a way to show that there is a difference, and we're going to respect those differences. And I mean, it's just be a good dude. Like, don't be an a-hole. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. I don't want to get it's not too philosophical, but just be good.
Yeah. Well, so it's like you said we used to have to respect women, and in my head I was thinking, yeah, but now we don't have to because of the feminist movement.
Right.
Like the feminist movement. I don't want to say I know what their motives were, because maybe many of them had good motives, especially in the beginning, but it's had the effect of, oh, don't open my door, I can get my door myself. And it's like, I know that you can open your door.
Yeah.
I'm not opening the door because I think less of you.
Has that ever happened to you? I mean, that's never happened. I mean, I guess it's probably because we live in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think here in Oklahoma, it's still very appreciated.
It's
you
still
know?
pretty,
Yeah.
People,
It's
like,
still like,
thank God.
Yeah, I love that. This is just a side note on Oklahoma. Like, if you're driving down old town and you're driving past, people still wave.
yeah, no,
You know,
I
just-
waved my neighbors.
Yeah.
I mean, just like
Don't know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like
Hey, what's going on? My son's like, why are you waving to them?
You guy. Hey.
Yeah. why? Do you know that person? I'm like, no, it's my
no,
neighbor.
you just wave.
You just wave.
Yeah. So you do have a little bit of a philosophical background to you, correct?
Yeah, a little bit, not
I mean-
much. I went to OU, and OU's
Uh-huh.
playing Texas right now. I
Oh,
believe.
yeah,
Are
that
they
is
right
true.
now?
I think it's right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it
So
is.
anyways, I don't really follow football anymore. Because I remember I just, the day I stopped following football was when I was in law school, and I was like, I had the hopes that OU was going to win the national championship that year, and they just biffed it against some team, and it just made me angry and depressed. And I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of feeling like this because some team loses. So I just stopped following. So, anyways, when I was at OU, I studied letters, which is basically a humanities degree. You study philosophy. I had to study Latin, literature, history. And so I did a lot. My focus was on, I did a lot of stuff in ancient Greek history, ancient Greek literature. So that was my background.
Mm-hmm.
And I've continued that with my own personal study and education after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were reading St. Thomas Aquinas, who's a big
Yeah.
philosophy guy.
Right.
Who else are some of the guys that you like?
Ancient guys.
Mhm.
I'm a big Aristotelian.
Okay.
I'm Aristotle. I'm on.
So you like St. Thomas then probably
yeah,
as well?
I'm on team Aristotle.
You mean the philosopher?
Right,
Yeah.
the philosopher. Yeah, I'm on Plato. Not a fan of Plato. He's too abstract, too ethereal.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Aristotle's just like, no, we're gonna bring this down on how to live a good life. So I'm an Aristotelian, definitely. Virtue ethics is my thing. The Stoics are good, but again, I'm sort of ambivalent about Stoicism because I think it denies emotions too much, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
Seneca particularly, we got two extremes. Like, well, even if you see your wife get murdered, you just got to be tranquil about it.
Right.
It's like,
No.
I'm not a
Yeah, we're body and soul. You
Right.
know, like, but emotions are part of the body.
right? And that's why I like Aristotle, because he takes that into account on what it means to live a good life, right?
Yeah.
Emotions play a role in that. So I like him. So Aristotle, not Plato. Stoics, pretty good. Trying to think who might sort of. Those are the big ones.
What
Like,
about modern guys? Do you have any?
modern guys? Man, I'm not a big modern philosophy guy.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, I've read Nietzsche because he's sort of just wackadoo and crazy and interesting. It's one of those mixed bags. He has some good aphorisms every now and then, but then
Mhm. There's a lot of stuff he got really right,
right.
but then at the end of he just kind of, the older he got, he just got weirder and
Yeah,
weirder, and
right.
it's just a unfolding train
Well,
wreck.
didn't he try to go insane? Wasn't he like?
No, they don't know what really.
don't
He just
know.
kind of worked himself
Yeah.
to death. He may have gotten syphilis. They think.
Yeah.
That's a theory.
That's not
No,
funny. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's like,
No, but there's a lot of misconceptions about the guy. But I mean, the things he got right, like when he talked about God is dead, like he wasn't celebrating that, right? He was actually describing what was happening in Western culture. Like, yeah, we killed God with science, and we killed God with, philosophy. And now, like, this is a crazy time to live because since there is no God anymore, so you said, like, people pretend like there was a God, right? The sort of the Enlightenment, right? They kind of give lip service to it, but they really didn't
believe it.
right?
Yeah.
And he said this is going to open up tragedies, right? Because there's like no common good anymore. Like there's no agreement, and like he predicted basically, World War II, World War I, all that stuff. So that's one misconception. People think, he celebrated the death of God. He was like, no, actually, it's a terrible thing because
Yeah.
we just opened up Pandora's box, and we're still battling with people are
Moral relativism.
Moral relativism. People are confused about what is good, what is right. Nietzsche predicted that. But his answer to that was, people have to come up with their own value system, become an Übermensch, right? And
Yeah.
it's impossible.
Right.
I think, it's psychologically impossible. I mean, I think people like that idea, right? I think you see that it's very,
because it always caters to you.
right. I think you see it a lot. I mean, I think, you sort of like the self-help world.
Right.
It's all about that. Like, you find your own values, find your own mission in life, which, there's good things to that.
Sure.
But like, that's hard to do. Like, okay, how do you even decide?
Well, I think this is a perfect transition to my next question. What, in your opinion, should be the role of religion in a man's life?
I'm a big, I go to church. I'm not Catholic, obviously. But yeah, I think religion, here's a great analogy. Masculinity is sort of like this unbridled energy that men have. And it's like electricity. It can either be used for good or for bad, right? If electricity isn't sort of contained and channeled, like, it can just cause destruction.
In unknown places.
Just crazy, right? It's like, violence, spousal abuse, drunkenness. I mean, that's masculinity. It's like this energy, right? But it's not being channeled towards productive or good means. I think one thing religion does is it can provide some direction for that energy through the culture that religion inculcates, the ritual that reminds you of like a greater good, through study. It gives you a good idea of what it means to be a good man, taking that masculine energy that you have and channeling it towards something positive.
We have
it seems to me like it's religion. You talk about self-help books, religion. Reach inside of you, come up with your own tradition, your own values. Like, well, how about
I'm living my truth?
Right. How about you rely on some time-tested ones that have been handed down over the centuries?
Right.
Maybe that would be a good place to start. Yeah.
Right.
That actually, okay, so that segues into my next, we don't have very much more time, but there are a lot of guys who are listening to this right now who have young families who are wanting to pass down, start traditions.
Yeah.
Because I think that is something that we don't do a good job of today is establishing family traditions.
Yeah.
What would be your suggestion? What would you say to them? Like, here's a good way to start family traditions.
I mean, you
just do it.
You just do it, right? I mean, like, everyone's like, you just do it. So like, family tradition we have in our house, it comes from my faith practice. I'm Mormon. This idea of family home evening, where like one night you get together as a family. There's no TVs, no screens, and you just spend. I mean, it's like 20 minutes, and we'll start off. We'll give like a lesson from scripture, or it could be, we're going to talk about what does it mean to be honest, or we're talking about personal finances. It could be whatever, right?
Sure.
We're being very intentional with instructing our kids. That's another thing I feel like a lot of parents don't do. Is they just, whatever, they're going to learn how to be.
The government will educate my children.
Yeah. Caillou will educate my kid. So, we spend like maybe 5-10 minutes doing that. And then it's 10-15 minutes just discussing what's going on in our week, right? Here's it's great to get everyone on the same page, right? Gus, you got football this week, you got scouts, you got this, you got that. So we got that all laid out in our calendar, and then we read over these rules that we got from John Wooden, the basketball coach, that he had as a kid. It was like, be honest, never lie, never steal, never cheat, be strong, never whine. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. My kids repeat that every single week.
Nice. That's awesome.
And then we, what do we do after that? And then we just kind of ask how things going in the house. Like, okay, well, you guys can do better picking up here. Do that. We end with prayer. Then we have a treat. That's family home evening.
Yeah.
We do that once a week. It's Monday or Tuesday nights. Nice. So that's one tradition you can do. And then, if depending on your faith, every religion has certain rites of passage they go through, whether it's, confirmation, first communion, like make a big deal about that. Right. So I think, being intentional about that.
That is a really good suggestion, I think.
Yeah. Make a big deal and be intentional as your kids are coming up, towards it. You got to start thinking, okay, what can I do to start helping them get ready for that? And, they make a big deal when it does happen. So that's one other thing. And just like the holidays offer a chance for tradition. Another going back to, again, religion, you've got this, like, it's already set there. You can follow the liturgical calendar if you wanted to, right?
Right.
It's like, today's this feast day.
Yep.
Here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And do it.
In fact, yesterday was the feast of St Faustina, and my daughter's middle name is Faustina. After that, so on my way home from work, I went to Reese's, bought a little cake, had them write "Happy Feast Day, St Faustina," and after dinner, we celebrated.
There's like so many opportunities. It's just you have to be intentional and just, yeah, you have to be intentional and just when you see it, when you think about it, just do it.
Right.
Right.
And the more ways to work cake into it, I think
exactly.
is a win for them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's for them, yeah,
Yeah,
for them,
for you.
yeah. Sure, it's a win for them, the kids.
Yeah.
It's for the kids.
We don't have very much time left, so
We got 5 minutes.
let me ask you this: what's in the hopper? What do you got going on?
So the podcast is going on. We're still, I mean, it's kind of funny. You start off as a like a blog, writing text content. We still do that. People, what I found though is people don't know that. They just know me as a podcast guy. But we do have the Art of Manliness website.
Oh, the website is so good.
There's like, we got 4,000 articles in there. They're meaty, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to
Absolutely.
be thorough and comprehensive
Yeah.
with it. And you're going to find everything from, primers on Plato there, even though I don't like the guy. I think it's important to understand Plato. I'm working on Aristotle now. But then we also have things just like just fun stuff. We have one Catholic Man show. We've got biblical here. We got one illustrated guide on how to gird up your loins.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've seen that. I've seen the art,
Right.
the cartoon, or it's not.
It's a cartoon.
Illustration.
It's a cartoon.
Yeah.
So we have illustrated guides on how to gird up your loins, how to poop like a samurai.
Yes.
The fun stuff. But then
Because
also
your sword always sticks in
right.
the ground.
You got to
when
watch out.
squat, yeah.
No, you have to cross your leg, and you'll read the illustration why you cross your leg.
I see.
But then we have just like meaty things on honor. We did a whole series about what it means to be a man. Basing off that Manhood in the Making book. And then useful things just like personal finances, fitness, being a dad, a lot of just useful content there. And then we also have the podcast, and we also have, I started this thing last year called The Strenuous Life.
Yes.
Which is an online platform you can sign up, and basically it's the best way to describe it. It's Scouts for grown men. Now I know that will sound silly, and like a grown man would think, why would I want to do that? But what I found is one of my challenges with the Art of Manliness is I've always wanted guys to just actually do this stuff. And a lot of guys would read it and they're like, oh, well, how can I do this? And I'm like, all right, since you can't exercise your phronesis, your practical wisdom, we'll help you out. So we provided some structure, basically created 50 different badges based around 50 different skills. So we have things like wilderness survival, camping, rucking, a barbell badge. Then we have things. We have a paterfamilias badge.
Nice.
So father badge where you have to do like a weekly meeting with your family, then plan adventures and things like that. Personal finances. We have a gentleman's scholar badge where you have to do some continuing education, but on your own. And so we just tell you, here are these certain requirements, do them, and it's amazing. Like when guys embrace this stuff, like they say like I was sort of in a slump for a while, but like this is giving me some structure, and I'm doing stuff that I always said I would do, but never got around to doing it. And here I am doing it. So
you've incentivized guys to practice virtue.
Right. I mean that's
essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Putting it into action. We do these daily check-ins. You have to check in whether you did 60 minutes of physical activity. Could be anything. Could be lifting weights. Could be taking a walk with your family. Could be roughhousing with your kids. And then they have to do a good deed every day, and it could be picking up trash. Sending someone a letter, that you think needs a letter.
That's one that I really like. I got that from you as well. Is taking the time to write letters.
People love mail.
In fact, I got one the other day from one of our supporters, and it is your stationery. It's Art of.
Oh, is it? That's awesome.
On Art of Manliness.
That's fantastic.
Stationery. Yeah.
But did it make your day? You got
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I got a piece. Like people love mail. Like we just did this sticker giveaway on Instagram where we sent people like an Art of Manliness sticker for free. You just had to sign this form. And people are writing back to me like, oh, that made it was so great to get like mail that's not junk.
Right.
Yeah, handwritten.
And know that somebody took the time to
Right.
sit down, thought of me,
Right.
and wrote something down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a new idea.
What a
new
novelty.
idea.
Yeah.
Right.
I have one last personal question
No,
for you.
sure.
How do you read so many books?
Because
You read. I mean, you put out 2 podcasts a week, and you've read the books for
Yeah.
the person you're interviewing.
Right.
And I sit there and I was like, how does he do that?
You just do it. I mean, like there's like no speed. Like there's some books I speed read.
Yeah.
If it's like one of those like pop business books, right? You buy at the airport,
Right.
Where it's like bullet pointed and like headings organized nicely. I'll skim that because they all say the same thing pretty much.
Yeah.
But like meaty books, right? If it's like a biography or a work of historic, some history book. Man, you just read through it and take your time. You just have to make time for it.
Got to do the work.
Just got to do the work. You just do it. I mean, that's the thing. Everyone's like, "What's the secret?" No, you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that a lot of it has to do though with putting your phone away when you're reading.
Well, sometimes I read on my phone. So
Okay.
So yeah, like some things, I'm on my. That's another thing. So like I prefer paper, because I just like the tactile nature of it, and it's less distracting. But I have the Kindle app on my phone, so you can. I'll when I'm lifting weights between sets, I'll read in line at the post office. Bust out the phone, read a little bit. Go into the bathroom.
Yeah.
You read.
Yeah.
Make it productive instead of reading the back of the toothpaste or the deodorant.
I've never read the instructions on toothpaste before.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's done that. 'Cause you're bored. That's what you did before smartphones. So
Yeah.
instead of skimming Instagram now, I guess, I read a book. So
Nice.
fill those empty times with reading. You just got to read. Just got to do it. I'm an Aristotelian. You just do it.
Just do it.
That had never occurred to me.
Just do it.
Nike, they've had it figured. They've been trying to tell us, these whole years. Just do it.
Just do it.
Brett, thanks so much for taking the time and hanging out with us.
Hey, it was fun.
It was a lot of fun, and I know you're a busy guy, but I appreciate it a lot.
No, it was funny. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Welcome to this edition of the Catholic Man Show. We're really excited to share this episode with you as we have a special guest, Mr. Brett McKay from the Art of Manliness. But first, we want to say a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Institute of Carmelite Studies. Go to icspublications.org and make sure to use the discount code TCMS15. That's the Catholic Man Show 15. You get 15% off all purchases. If you're looking to increase your library with works from St. John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, St. Therese of Lisieux, Edith Stein. If you're looking for some great Carmelite spirituality, go check them out. That's icspublications.org. Make sure to use TCMS15 and your discount code to let them know that we sent you. We want to thank them for being the sponsors of this show. And without further ado, Mr. Brett McKay from the Art of Manliness. Enjoy.